Welcome to Digital Marketing Intelligence for E-commerce Ask the Experts. Our weekly podcast and video show offers e-commerce platform store owners, store developers, app providers, investors, and marketing agencies insights from discussions with marketing and e-commerce experts. Grow faster with tips, tricks, and proven strategies, and learn what's new in e-commerce digital marketing for 2022 and beyond. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Digital Marketing Intelligence for E-commerce Ask the Experts. I'm Marissa Morgan, your show host and business development manager at Engage. On behalf of myself and the entire team at Engage, I'm excited to welcome you to today's episode. Today, we're talking about how to maximize your e-commerce revenue through omni-channel marketing. And our guest is the head of growth for a very successful agency. I also like to call him the OG of the ad tech world, and he's also a serial e-commerce entrepreneur. I'll be introducing you to our guest in just a moment. But before I do that, just a few words about Engage. If you've not yet checked out our app, Engage, SMS for Shopify, you need to check it out because right now, SMS messaging and SMS marketing is the key to driving sales, connecting with your consumers, and being able to easily segment different marketing campaigns that you have going on and really connect with consumers where they are. We all know that's on their cell phone and mobile devices. You can check out our app at www.ngagge.com. That's engage.com, where you can sign up for a free 45-day free test drive and get 5,000 free SMS messages to use to start messaging your customers right away. You've got nothing to lose, but a whole lot of business to gain with SMS messaging and SMS marketing in 2023 and beyond. So check out engage.com for all your SMS messaging needs. Okay, without further ado, it is time. Why do people say that? Without further ado, I guess it was started back in like the Shakespeare days. I don't even know, but I'm so guilty of saying it. So we're just going to keep it working, right? Without further ado, joining us today from Kansas City, Missouri, is our guest, Ryan Riggin. Ryan, as I mentioned, is a veteran of the ad tech industry. He's one of those original ad tech OGs, and he received a BS in journalism and a concentration in advertising from the University of Kansas, where he grew up, and then went on to get an MBA from Baker University. He started in 2014 a company called Measure Media, which was a marketing analytics company that was soon after acquired. And now he is the proud head of growth and business development for a company called Inuvo. He's also an investor in Omni Brands, e-commerce, 3PL, and Brand Studio. Fun fact about Ryan, you often see him with a baseball in his hand. He says he thinks best when he's got a baseball in his hand. And I think his sons think the same, or I should say his kids. I don't know if they're both boys, but he's got a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old and is a proud baseball dad to two young baseball players, you know? So I kind of assumed they were both boys, Ryan. Did I make the right assumption, or do you have a girl who loves baseball too?
No, you did. They're both boys. They're 15 and 16, high school boys here in Kansas City, and they play a lot of baseball, and it's fun to watch. So,
well, I have
love
a
it.
soft spot in my heart for baseball. As I mentioned to you before we started the show, I used to do some work for the Devil Rays in St. Petersburg back in my college days. Now I'm in Minneapolis, where Rocco Baldelli is actually the coach of the Minnesota Twins. So it's kind of funny
Nice.
what a small world it is, right? Talk about a full circle.
Yeah,
But
it's
let's
funny.
talk
Like my
about,
kids play
yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say my kids playing baseball. I was like, I've been around a lot of baseball the last 10 years, and one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of similarities between baseball and just business and entrepreneurship in general. Like particularly like the ability to learn to fail, play the long game. Like if you bat 300 in baseball, you're going to the Hall of Fame. And so that life lesson for my kids has been really fun to watch. They're both learning to like deal with failure and how to get through the tough times in baseball, and it's neat to watch.
I love that analogy, and I couldn't agree more. And what I was just going to say is it's funny the way the world works, it's interesting how people's life trajectories take them different places and on different roads to success. But you started a company way back in 2014, which was shortly after acquired. And I'd love to hear more about where you started in that ad tech marketing and analytics world, and what journey you've had to take you to your current position at Inuvo as the head of
Sure.
growth and business development. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It's been a really fun ride. I mean, I going way back to to school. Um, I went to school for journalism, so like I was a newspaper guy, right? So my first job out of college was at the Chicago Sun Times, and I got into the newspaper world, and this was like in 2000, and the web started to become a thing. Um, and I worked for a handful of ad agencies in my 20s, kind of got a feel for the agency world, and was really fortunate to work for a really cool company founded by a young tech entrepreneur. Um, the company at the time was called Virtuamundo, and then it was rebranded as Ad Knowledge. But it was an email marketing company, and got really deep into email and customer acquisition through email and that sort of thing. And then actually, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, I ended up working for a company that was in the search technology space, and it was acquired by Inuvo actually. And so I actually worked for Inuvo from 2007 or 2006 to 2010, I think it was. And then I left there. And I always kind of thought maybe I would come back at some point, but the timing was never right. But I kept in touch with the management team. There's a lot of really good people there. The technology that they have built is we'll get into this later, but it's really, really interesting, and solves a massive, massive industry problem right now. So the timing was good, but I left Inuvo in 2010, and my career, took a really kind of weird left turn. You mentioned John Galt Refining on my profile there. I when I left Inuvo, I it's a long story, but I had these two buddies that started a Cash for Gold website, sellyourgold.com. That was my first real entry into like e-commerce. And the business model was simple. Somebody goes to the website, they say they want to sell some gold, and we value it and buy it. But the whole business model was based on, you know, search engine marketing. We bought keywords like sell gold, sell it online, how to sell my gold. And then we scaled that. We went from 0 to 5 million in revenue in a 4-year time frame. Um, and but the business model was fairly straightforward. But what we had to do is we had to, we expanded it out by site. So we had a site for gold, a site for watches, a site for diamonds, a site for platinum, and I'm missing one. But each one of them was a super tight niche, but it was kind of the same model across them all. Got really good at running paid search, Facebook ads, email, figuring out how to get a landing page to convert, all of those things. And then in 2014, that business was acquired, and the guy that bought it asked me to continue to run the ad accounts. So I continued to run Google, Facebook, email, the website, the CRM, all that kind of stuff. So it was funny. I started an agency called Measure Media, and my one client was my company. And so I really had no intention of starting an agency. It just kind of happened by accident. When we were running the gold business for 5 years in a row, we spent $1 million of our own money, on ads. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's your money, $1 million is $1 million. And we were spending, there were 3 of us that owned it. We had an angel investor. We ended up with 20 employees by the time it was all said and done. But on the daily, we were spending 4 or 5 grand a day on Google and Facebook, and it gets intense real quick when your card is in Google and you're spending that kind of money.
That's a
You
lot
have
of
to get good at
airline
it.
points.
Oh yeah, our airline points were sick. It was really fun. But anyway, the business, when we got done with it, I decided to start this agency called Measure Media, and we were all about analytics and conversion optimization. It was kind of our niche. And again, like I never had any real intention to grow it, but what started to happen was other clients and friends, started asking, "Hey, can you help us with this problem or that problem?" And I got it to about 4 or 5 clients, and I realized that we need to start building a team. And so we sort of built out all of the processes for how to run an agency, with project managers, account managers, biz dev, client services, the whole thing. And that business, I sold that business in right as the pandemic kind of started to heat up. And um, a lot of our clients were e-commerce brands. So we would work with a lot of Shopify stores, WooCommerce stores, brands that were trying to kind of figure out Google Merchant Center and, how that talks to Google Analytics and, you know, Amazon, and really kind of, getting really good at the optimizing kind of an e-commerce marketing stack, right? Shopify, connected to Amazon, connected to Walmart, Seller Central, all the different distribution channels, just kind of got good at e-commerce. And as I was running the agency, one of the things that always, I don't know if I really want to say it bothered me, but what bothered me was not having skin in the game with my own brands, right? We were serving clients, which I love doing, but
Mhm.
there's something to be said for having your own brands as one is just an ability to kind of have a sandbox. So, when clients would ask us questions, we would have real answers. Like, yeah, we have tried that on our brand and it worked or didn't work. And so, the credibility and the ability to kind of maybe be a little bit vulnerable and test new things out with clients. If you have your own brand and are willing to test it on your own brand, then the clients seem to sort of respect you a little bit more, I think. So anyway, that's kind of how Measure Media went down. And then, this opportunity came up with the Nuvo, and it's, our CEO, Rich Howe, who's a really, interesting dude, has built some really big businesses. He commented that, when you want to build a big business, you need like a catalyst. You need an industry
Mm.
catalyst, like some big thing that is changing. Um, and for e-commerce and just generally like online advertising as a whole, this whole issue with cookies and privacy in iOS is literally
Mhm.
like a big rug pull, like what worked a year ago does not work now. And it's all because, the cookies basically dying, and so this technology that Anuvo has, and the processes and the services that we have built around it, um, solve that problem in a really unique way. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but my background.
No, that does. And, just hearing how much experience you have in this industry, in these different, areas really of the industry and what you're doing now with Anuvo is exactly why you're the perfect person to have on our podcast. Because I know that everything that you're doing for your company, coupled with your experience with Measure Media, and the analytics work you did there is exactly really where the world is going now with omni-channel marketing. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, all these changes that we've all as consumers experienced, being able to
Yep.
opt in now, whether you give your information to a company, like we love that as consumers, and
Yeah.
companies at the same time are going, oh no, all this like third party data that I'm used to getting and used to making
Hmm.
decisions on now is being, like you said, taken away. This is exactly
Yep.
why you're a perfect guest for our show, because that's what we're all about. We're talking about e-commerce. We're talking about those of you out there who are maybe a small to mid-sized business. You've got $1 million to $2 to $3 million happening with your Shopify store or your WooCommerce
Hmm.
store or another platform. Let's talk about how we're going to use omni-channel marketing to maximize our revenue. And you have been
Yeah.
so kind as to share with me a few specific bullet points that you're going to share with the audience. And you're going to
Yeah.
start first by talking about omni-channel e-commerce stacks.
Yeah.
Then we're going to talk about optimizing for top of funnel matrix and their directional impact on bottom of funnel stats. We'll
Yep.
talk about that iOS 14 impact on media buying and customer
Mhm.
acquisition that you started touching upon. And then we'll end our talk today with the importance of brand content in the top of funnel media. So,
Cool.
starting off, Ryan, with this idea of omni channel e commerce stacks, for someone
Hmm.
who's
Yeah.
listening, maybe they have a small Shopify store, maybe they're just getting going with hiring some technical staff or employees, and they're looking to build their business and they don't exactly know what an e-commerce stack is,
Mhm.
how can you start there in describing what an
Yeah.
e-commerce stack is and the importance of an omni-channel e-commerce stack?
Yeah, sure. So I think of an e-commerce stack as just the tools that you run, that you use to run your e-commerce brand, right? So
Mhm.
an e-commerce stack would consist of, Shopify in our case, WooCommerce, was a real popular one, BigCommerce. There's all these, e-commerce platforms. I kind of see that as the centerpiece of an e-commerce stack, and then distribution channels like Amazon or Walmart or Etsy or Poshmark or things like that. Those would be distribution channels, and in Shopify, Shopify kind of exists as the middle, right? And then you can
Mhm.
push to these other places. There's definitely nuances to how people do it. People use different tools, from a shipping and inventory management situation. There's always differences in, whether you got one warehouse or two warehouses, or you're using someone else to do your shipping. There's a whole industry of tools around, building that kind of stack to get it right. I will say the one thing that I didn't realize about e-commerce getting into it is that it's like, 80% inventory management, 20% ads. I mean,
Ooh, wait, say that
I mean,
again.
oh
That's
my gosh, yeah.
important. Yeah, say that again.
E-commerce, I'm an ad guy, but e-commerce is all about managing inventory. Like that's it. Like it is about managing inventory and cash flow, and e-commerce, the really good e-commerce operators. There's a couple of people that I could think of be really good interviews for you, but they're like the art of operating an e-commerce infrastructure, inventory, supply chain, multiple systems, Amazon, Shopify, Etsy. Like it's no joke. I'm an ad guy, and I think I
Mhm.
like I think all that stuff is super important, and but it's not my bag. And I know some people that are really really into it. But the point is that, like, back to the sort of the thought process of omni-channel, like, um, a lot of people think about an e-commerce brand as like, oh, I'm going to set up a Shopify store and that's my brand. But omni-channel, when I think about omni-channel, I think about all the different channels you're selling on, Shopify, Amazon, whatever. And then all the different content or ad channels that you're trying to build a brand or acquire customers on, right? Facebook, Insta,
Insta.
Reels,
Mhm.
TikTok, YouTube, whatever. Um, and while it wasn't e-commerce per se, sell your gold, it what I learned looking back on that business, I think the biggest difference between then and where I am now is that we really looked at that business like in a single channel like lens, right? So we would hone in on Google. Like, this is our acquisition lead gen metrics on Google, and we optimized those, right? And then we looked at Facebook completely differently. And even getting into the brands that I'm part of now, at the beginning, that's how we looked at it, right? Like, what's our conversion rate from Google? What's our conversion rate from
Mhm.
Facebook and search? What's our conversion rate from email? What's our conversion rate and then we looked at Amazon. It's completely different. Now what's going on, at least I think this is my opinion, but now I think that most e-commerce brands are omni-channel brands. Uh, they're just not thinking about them that way, and it's particularly from a media buying standpoint. Like, if you started an e-commerce brand today from scratch and you tried to like just focus on Google, you would have a really hard time. But if you
Mhm.
focus on Google, and even Google, within Google, you have Google, YouTube, and then you have Google Shopping, and then you have Google Search. So that's almost like three different channels. And then you have social, Facebook, Insta, Reels, TikTok. And then you got the marketplaces, right? Walmart, Amazon. So you really have to like zoom out.
Mhm.
And it's really challenging, um, especially if you're working with an agency that is super dialed into one channel. It's really hard to find a partner or an agency or even a CMO, um, that is incentivized on growing a single channel, um, but doesn't have the full picture of all of them. You know.
So, one thing I do understand about obviously marketing is this idea of a funnel.
Hmm.
Um, But when you talk about optimizing for the top of funnel metrics, what
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
do you mean by that? Because that's not something I've heard
Yeah.
of before, but
Yep. Yeah,
it's
that's a great question.
yeah.
I actually have a sort of like 80% of the way written piece about this topic, but I think the funnel is now a circle. It's sort of my
See, I
own
had a feeling
little
you were going to say that. Yes.
my own little thing. I do think, the funnel is still right, top down, broad to the conversion at the bottom. Um, but when I say optimizing for top of funnel metrics, like when I think most people when they think about top of funnel, they're thinking about brand awareness, reach, engagement, video
Mhm.
views. Those are things that if you look at those metrics in a silo for YouTube, connected TV, Facebook Reels, Insta, and try to find conversions out of like directly from those metrics, you're going to have a real hard time. Versus if you look at it from those top of funnel metrics drive your bottom of funnel stats. I'll give you a real time example. Like we can see, and I don't want this to turn into a sales pitch, but Anuvo's technology has really solved this problem. What we can see, like so I'm an investor in this brand called Urban Cycling, right? Urban Cycling is a cycling apparel brand. Um, we sell, cycling jerseys and kits and that sort of thing, and we do it on Shopify, Amazon, Walmart. We can see with a high degree of confidence that when we're running top of funnel media, connected TV, social media, video views on YouTube, that our Google search campaigns uh, have better conversion rates.
Perform better. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And what's going on is, you know, people see stuff on their phone, they scroll through their phone, they look, they view, they swipe, they whatever, and then later that day they go out and they pull up
Mhm.
Safari and they do a search for, urban cycling shorts or urban cycling mountain bike shorts or whatever it might be. And like I used to joke, like we spent 8 years in the conversion optimization business, right? That's what Measure Media did. We were all about like, if you got 8 steps in your form, like make it 3 and you'll increase your conversion rate. Or like, all these little weird little tactics to increase add to carts and increase conversion rates. And it's all relevant. And there's like a real big place for that. But the single biggest needle mover in terms of like how to increase a conversion rate is to build your brand. Like, your like if you look at your Google stats and you see your branded search and non-branded search, your branded search is going to convert at 20%. So the way to get more branded search is to run top of funnel media metrics, right? It's to run media campaigns on connected TV, right? Run top of funnel video campaigns on Reels and Insta,
Yeah.
for online video, that sort of thing. But the real like elephant in the room now is this whole iOS thing. How do you track that across all these channels and make sense of all of it?
Well, what you just shared makes so much sense because obviously, if you're taking the energy and the assets and the finances, right, to work on building the brand, it's Urban Cycle, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
you are going to get so many more conversions out of searching for Urban Cycle, people who
Yep.
search for Urban Cycle versus people
Yep.
who just do broad cycling shorts, cycling
Yep.
apparel, like, you know what I
Yep.
mean? It just
Yep.
makes total sense.
Yep.
And I will say, from a consumer standpoint, I like to think that I'm not that influenced by influencers. I'm one of those people, even though
Mm.
I do some of that work myself, I like to be like,
Yeah.
nah, they're not going to
Yeah.
influence me, but I
Mm.
will not. I mean, at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time on our mobile devices. And
Mm-hmm.
just when we think that we're not being influenced, something pops up and you're like, oh,
Yep.
yeah, I do need a dress for a Christmas party. And then,
Yep.
I don't always click exactly like you said, I don't always click the links of what I see. But if it's
Yep.
a brand that strikes my eye or something that
Yep.
I'm aligned with, even if it's something charity related or there's
Mm-hmm.
a gift that needs to be purchased, you best be believing I'm going to
Yep.
remember that or screenshot it or even X out of the social media program now and go direct to
Mm-hmm.
Safari or whatever
Yeah.
Chrome to search
Yep.
for it. And I
Yep.
am more likely to make that sale than if I'm just
Hmm.
randomly putting into a search engine holiday party dresses,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that specific company. So this all makes
Yep.
total sense, especially with
Yeah.
the way that social media has now taken such a big, do you feel, I was going to say a big pie share of advertising. Do you feel like that's
Mhm.
true? Do you feel like social media does have um, a big share of what's
Oh yeah, for
happening with
sure.
these changes? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, social influencers, I mean, everything that's going on with TikTok right now, like you can build a really nice brand on, with short form vertical content. There's a lot of brands that have been built with, with influencer partnerships. Like I love that strategy.
Yeah.
Um, the difference between that stuff though, and, you know, like it used to be all about clicks, and it's just not anymore.
Yeah.
Like rarely do I look at clicks from social media. Um, Most of the social media campaigns that I've seen work are more, view driven, right? So you try to build a brand through views, and then generate those bottom of funnel searches. Not, it kind of depends on the type of brand. Like, if it's an e-commerce retail brand, or like, Shopify brand like ours are, we still want clicks to our site. But like if it's a CPG brand, like this brand right here, right, Pellegrino, like their their marketing strategy on, I don't know this, but their marketing strategy on connected TV and video probably has nothing to do with clicks. Like they could probably care less about clicks. A 0% click-through rate, they don't care. What they're trying to do is get people to walk into, the neighborhood marketplace and pull this off of the shelf instead of one of the other 2,000, seltzer brands. What's
Right.
interesting about it
I was
feels
just,
like back in
oh,
the
sorry.
day.
Sorry,
I'm
hold
sorry.
on. I was just going to say they're more focused on continuing to build brand recognition
Oh yeah,
versus
for
click
sure.
throughs, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it kind of feels like we've kind of come full circle. Like back in the day, between, whenever 1950-ish and 2000, it was all, marketing was about building brand and awareness and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. It was the sort of creative agency heyday, right? And then in 2001, Google comes out and all the marketers, myself included, got lazy, right? It's like, you mean I can track someone from the time that they view my ad, click on it, go to my site, don't convert, click the abandoned cart email? Like you can see that funnel and it's linear. I mean, that's easy, but like that world is gone now. And now I think we're back to a place where like you got like the lazy marketers that were able to optimize that kind of funnel are going to get weeded out. And the only way to make it work now, in my opinion, is you zoom out. Uh, you got to have a really good understanding of your data and how it flows across channels, right? And then you got to use AI to do your media buying, right? Because it's literally the data moves so fast that it's if you're spending if you're spending $1 million a month on media across linear TV, connected TV, online video, social, display, etc., and you're trying to spend $1 million efficiently, trying to do that by hand is not scalable. Um, but what is to use AI, and that's where Inuvo comes in. So Inuvo has this AI platform that does a number of different things. But long story short, it does media mix modeling. So it can tell you on $1 million ad spend, what the best media mix is, and how to allocate your ad budgets across these channels. And it does it using your data, your conversion data, your revenue data, all of your data, and it's cookieless. So that's the other big difference. So this
Mm.
technology does not use cookies. We're not impacted, and our clients aren't impacted by this cookie problem because our technology does not. We don't even use cookies. Our system doesn't know what a cookie is. We have, we only have 30 minutes. So I don't want to go into the details, but in the years that I was gone, um, the Inuvo management team built out this technology platform that does all of this. It's AI powered media buying, and I would say if you're trying to figure out how to scale a brand, particularly with an e-commerce brand, like there's a lot of e-commerce brands right now that mine included, that really struggle with trying to figure out how to grow now because you can't, like, the whole Facebook media buying algorithm is just messed up. Like it just doesn't work anymore unless you can zoom out and see the full picture. And that's what we've built. And so we're working with brands, some big brands, you know, to scale media, and this iOS 14 issue, you know, as a sales pitch, like if you're struggling with how to grow right now and the iOS 14 issue is it all on your radar, you know, give us a call, because we have the cheat code, as I like to say.
I like that. This is so fascinating because you're exactly right. The strategy now needs to totally shift. And if people haven't already, they're already experiencing, decreases in sales, decreases in engagement because of these new privacy laws. And you're right, AI is a big way to get around that, and a smart way to do it, and an efficient way. If you can use they call it first party data, right? If you can use the data that you already have. Can
Mm-hmm.
I ask you, just since Engage
The,
has an
yep.
SMS messaging app,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on some of the other tools that are out there that are, more of an omni-channel approach, like SMS messaging, being able to connect with customers on their mobile devices? How incredible is that, and
I love it.
invaluable is
Yeah.
that, right?
I love it. I am going to sign up for Engage and test it out. I am a big believer in SMS as an acquisition retention strategy, particularly for e-commerce, particularly with Gen Z, like with, you
Yeah.
know, with younger consumers, like that's just sort of table stakes. Like that's how they communicate. And it's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day about SMS, and the thinking was, well, that's annoying. You know, like I don't want to get texts. Well, that's like what people said about email in 2000, and you know, email is still like thriving. Like great, biggest channel for us is email. I think that you're going to be hard pressed to find an e-commerce brand that can grow without a really solid SMS strategy. So
I
yeah, for
agree.
sure, I'm all in on that. The one thing about first party data that you mentioned is like first party data is a real struggle because it can only get you so far, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
doing, you know, I'm trying to think of some numbers, but if you're the bottom line is there just isn't enough first party data to get a brand past a certain point. So that's where, you know, our tech comes in and you know, essentially the hardest part right now about scaling a brand is that it's almost impossible to find new audiences because the cookies are gone. You know, these ad platforms don't know how to go do lookalikes and all that stuff that you used to be able to do.
Mhm.
So now what you got to do is use technology that can find patterns, which is probably the simplest way to explain what Inuvo's tech does. Is we put one line of code on a landing page, and then it develops what we call concepts. So it can find concepts based on what it can see from your site, from the open web. So every day we index the entire web. We have a web crawler that's been around for 20 some years. It's really fascinating, the sort of development pipeline behind this whole thing. But long story short, we have a web crawler, 20 years worth of web history. We index the entire web every day. And we also see data from the bid stream from our ad server. So we see all this data from all these other places. And our system can make, you know, what it calls concepts. I'll give you like a real life example. We work with a client that well, I'm going to give it away, but we work with a client that has some sleep buds, earphones, right? And we found out that the types of people that buy these earbuds they over-index by a factor of like 1,000 to have old dogs, and not just old dogs, but old dogs that are short snouted. Let's take a wild guess for what the connection is there.
Mm.
People that have old dogs that have short snouts, those dogs snore like crazy. And so these
Ah.
sleep canceling, noise canceling headphones fix it. But our technology uncovered that little hook, and the brand had no idea. It wasn't an audience they were targeting. They couldn't have targeted them anyway if they wanted to. And our tech stepped in, fixed it, and you know, that's just one little example. But what we do is we put this code on your landing page and we find these associations, and then we go run media campaigns for each little one.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, I didn't build it.
My
Rich
head
Howe
just
and his team did.
exploded
I'm
a
just
little bit over
selling
here. No, that makes total
it.
sense. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the conversion rate on those
Yeah. Yeah.
specific
Hmm.
little tidbits is huge
Yeah,
because you
it is. And
found this
what's
commonality, this
yeah,
common factor.
yeah. Well, and something you said is interesting too. The engagement on these platforms is super important, right? So
Hmm.
views, watch time. It's not just about generating a conversion. If you can make a piece of content or a piece of creative that speaks to someone's pain point, like in that
Hmm.
case, the creative execution had a pug in it, right?
Hmm.
And so you're creating an ad that connects with someone on a level that is 100 times higher than what it used to be before. um
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's why it goes way back to when advertising and television first started, when they started creating like jingles, right? You'd get this
yeah,
like jingle stuck in your head, even if it was campy or silly or like the Mentos commercial. Like,
yeah,
there's just certain little things, certain pieces of advertising that tends to stick more, get stuck in your head more, resonate more,
yeah,
or connect with a certain demographic more. And once
yeah,
companies realize this, the power of that,
yeah, yeah,
that's something that's never stopped. It's just we use it in different places now. We use it in
yeah,
different ways, but
yeah,
connecting and the power of connection is the biggest tool I think any company has. And I think what
yeah,
you're helping us understand today is when you take that the power of connection and the tool of connection and you use it in the proper omni-channel approach, right?
yep,
With
yep.
the right team, like a Nuvo, right? With
Hmm.
the right tools, like maybe an Engage SMS,
Yep.
messaging app. Like when you do all of that right, and you enlist help from people who do it well, you're going to
Yeah.
succeed as long as you
Yeah.
take the time to build your brand,
Yeah. Well, and then
for
it's
and
consumer
foremost.
it's consumer safe too. I mean,
Hmm.
the last 20 years we have the web people are getting monetized. That old saying, if you're not the product, then you are. If you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. It, we are we got to get out of that. Like, we got to give people their data back. And consumers are demanding it. Like, this whole thing about iOS and Apple killing the cookie, like that's happening, but the consumers are doing it already. Like, the consumers have already drawn a line in the sand and said, I am not okay with this.
Hmm.
We want our data back. And that's kind of this whole idea of Web3 and tokens. And I think the overarching theme there is like, that's consumers saying, we want to own our data. And there's some interesting companies out there building a new web. Like, there's a browser called Brave browser. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Brave, I mean, they have this cookieless, Web3 browser, and their whole mission is to give customers their data back.
Your
And
data. Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
just saw
it's
an
an
I
exciting time.
Yeah, I just saw a commercial the other day. It wasn't Brave. It was, I think, a similar concept where
Yeah.
it allowed people to browse in private and keep all
Yep.
of their information private and feel confident about just being on the web anywhere they want to be. I think that's
Yeah.
important. That's important.
Yeah, well, and I think your guys' product, the idea of like one-to-one connections with brands is what
Mhm.
customers really sort of expect nowadays. I mean, they want direct communication with the brand, no middlemen, and I think Engage is in a pretty good spot to build on that.
And I think you mentioned earlier, I think this is a good kind of final thought to end on. You mentioned the importance or the mention, I should say, of people saying, well, text is annoying or I don't want to be texts. The important thing to remember, just like, social media campaigns or, any sort of marketing that you're putting out there are rules that need to be followed,
Hmm.
right? People do need to opt in to receive
Hmm.
text messages, and at
Yeah,
any time they can opt out.
yeah,
And I do believe there are rules on what they call quiet time.
yeah,
Different
yep,
countries, different places, whatever. So just remember, if a
yeah,
company is using a tool in their omni-channel stack and it's for SMS messaging, they're probably doing it right.
yeah,
At least I hope they are, and being respectful, just like you should be with your email campaigns
yeah,
as well.
for sure.
So
Yep. for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, I wish we could talk all day. I feel like we're just scratching the surface, but this is a great way to introduce you to our audience
Yeah,
and
appreciate it.
introduce what Anuvo does. I'd like to share with our audience how they can connect with you after listening to today's podcast, if that's
Yeah,
okay
of
with
course.
you.
Sure.
You guys can connect with Ryan, and an easy way to do that is on LinkedIn. You can look him up. It's Ryan, Ryan, Riggin, Riggin. Please, if you message Ryan, do leave him a note, or if you connect with him, also leave him a note. Let him know that you heard him on the Engage podcast. And then also check out the Anuvo website. For those of you listening to this podcast, I know that we mentioned a little bit about what Ryan does at Anuvo. He is the head of growth and business development now, but he used to be back at Anuvo as the senior vice president. Is that it? Of marketing? Is that right?
Yes, I was in
Uh,
marketing back in the day for him. Yeah.
where he led corporate marketing and product strategy. So at the end of the day, his blood runs pretty deep with Anuvo, and I know that he'd be happy to help you connect with the right people if you're looking for Anuvo's help when it comes to
Yeah.
putting this omni-channel process into effect for your e-commerce brand.
Yeah.
Ryan, like I said, I'd love to keep talking, but is there anything you'd like to share to wrap up today's episode with me?
No, listen, I just I appreciate it for one. I've done a few of these, and this was super buttoned up, and you should be commended for that. It's really, really well done, well organized. So I
Oh.
appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Well, thank you for coming on board to be our guest expert today. You guys connect with Ryan Riggin from Anuvo. You can do that through LinkedIn and also at anuvo.com. Today, we learned a little bit more on how to maximize your growth with omni-channel marketing. And if you're looking for a tool, of course, you can use Engage SMS for Shopify. That's our app. But you can also reach out to Anuvo, which has some incredible technology to help you on that omni-channel marketing path, as we learned
Yeah.
today with Ryan. So, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And again, we appreciate you being our guest expert.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Have a good one. What an awesome guest. Another home run. Hey, no pun intended, Ryan, with Ryan Riggin. He's a big baseball fan. He thinks best when he's got a baseball in his hand. And as you can tell from our very informative and insightful podcast today, he knows a lot, not only about the e-commerce and ad tech industry, but also about omni-channel marketing. And he can certainly help your e-commerce business and your brand grow and maximize your revenue when you connect with him and Anuvo. Thank you guys so much for joining us for today's 99th episode of the Engage Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Marissa Morgan. And of course, if this podcast was insightful or helpful to you today, make sure you share the link to this podcast with your colleagues as well. On behalf of myself and the entire team at Engage, I want to thank you for joining me. And of course, we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.